the leader in talk radio on the Internet, right here on K98Talk.com.
If you want to work until you keel over, have less of everything in retirement, or give back more of your hard-earned money to the stock market again, then just ignore me. But if you'd like to protect the money you save, receive a steady, predictable retirement income, and enjoy financial security for as long as you live, then listen to this. You can download a free report that reveals the wealth-building secrets Wall Street and the banks don't want you to know. You'll learn how you can get guaranteed growth, safety, and real prosperity without risking your money in the Wall Street casino, and how to get the money you need when you need it, simply by asking for it. This is the best way to have a 100% secure retirement and know your money will last as long as you do. To learn more about this method and to get your free report, go to 29security.com. That's the number 29security.com. 29security.com. Go to 29security.com.
This is Slickery Trigger for Rebel Road Tactical. With proper care and feeding, your pistol will be ready when you need it. There to save your life. Shouldn't your gear be that good? Whether you need a holster for comfortable everyday carry or a tough-as-nails holster for your next training course, Rebel Road Tactical has what you need. Check us out on the web at rebelroadtactical.com.
Tired of paying outrageous prices for Viagra? Well, we have great news for you. Now you can finally get Viagra at huge discounts. Healthy Man allows you to save up to $500 on Viagra. Why pay U.S. pharmacy prices of $15 per pill or more when you can get Viagra for less than $3 a pill? Call today and get 40 Viagra pills for only $99. This can cost as much as $600 at your local pharmacy. You can't afford not to call us. If you want Viagra at the lowest prices, never pay $15 a pill pharmacy prices again. Get Viagra for less than $3 a pill. Call 1-800-516-7602 today and save up to $500 and get 40 pills for just $99. Healthy Man is fast, easy, and affordable. Operators are waiting at 1-800-516-7602 to take your call right now. Call 1-800-516-7602. That's 1-800-516-7602. Again, 1-800-516-7602.
In these uncertain economic times, you've got to do whatever you can to save money. One of our biggest expenses can be our cars, especially when unexpected repair bills hit. Not anymore. If you own a vehicle with less than 130,000 miles, is less than 12 years old, has a warranty about to expire, or even no warranty at all, you could stop paying for car repairs. Roadside assistance, towing, and rental coverage are all included. Don't wait for the next repair. Make one free call right now to see if you qualify. If your vehicle is less than 12 years old, has less than 130,000 miles, even if it's out of warranty, paying for car repairs can become a thing of the past. Call us right now and get your car protected before your next repair bill hits. Get protection and no more repair bills. Call 800-696-1030. Again, 800-696-1030. That's 800-696-1030. 800-696-1030.
All right, folks, this is Rick Robinson with you. I want to tell you about some friends of mine from a company called Security Enforcement Specialists. When I ran my security agency for 12 years, I worked with one of these partners on a daily basis. He's been involved in this agency now, and with his other partner, they do have over 30 years of experience in the private security industry. If you own a business and you need someone to keep you or your customers or residents safe, then I highly recommend contacting Security Enforcement Specialists today. Give them a call at 405-703-1796. Again, that's 405-703-1796. Again, tell them Rick from K98 Talk sent you. Like I said, if you need the help, they are here for you. So make sure that you go look them up, check them out, and see what they can do.
Wrong way. Welcome to the place. Welcome.
Joe had huge problems with the IRS.
I knew it was coming. I hadn't filed taxes since 1990.
All the IRS letters coming in added up to a nightmare.
To get up to like $68,000, my heart started beating fast. It's like, there's no way, man. I mean, I ain't going to be able to do this.
Then they stopped his paycheck.
So that's when I started making phone calls and found U.S. Tax Shield.
U.S. Tax Shield went to work immediately.
They just took the bull by the horns. What blew my mind is he called the IRS right then and there.
So why is U.S. Tax Shield A+ rated with the Better Business Bureau? Joe knows.
They saved me a ridiculous amount of money.
If you owe more than $10,000 to the IRS or state, choose the company Joe chose, U.S. Tax Shield.
It was the best decision I made. U.S. Tax Shield is the way to go. Life is good. Thank you, Lord.
Call 800-471-3287.
U.S. Tax Shield. Boo-rah. Yes.
800-471-3287. 800-471-3287.
The Internet will never be the same. You're listening to K98Talk.com.
Wow. Good God, y'all. What is it good for? Absolutely.
Take care. God bless.
We'll see you Saturday.
And you are listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show, coming to you live from the Conservative Political Action Conference here at Washington, D.C. All the Conservative Commandos are supposed to be here. We do have one of them. Where is that, J.D. Manier? J.D., it's great to see you and Christina once again.
Oh, it's fabulous. Another CPAC.
And it was like 5 or 6 years ago that you and I and Christina first met at CPAC. You were at that time running for Congress, and you come down to Radio Row. We interviewed you, had a great time with you, and after that, you become one of the Conservative Commandos, and you're back again. It's great to have you with us.
Well, we're hooked. Rick, this has been a great privilege, and we've had a great time today.
Yeah. You and Christine have been roaming around here at CPAC. What are you seeing? What are you hearing from the peeps?
Such energy downstairs. Charlie Kirk's Turning Point, they're doing line dances to the music down there. Christina, what do you see?
I know. Well, I see an urgency. There's such an urgency about that people are really listening. People are really wanting specific answers. They're not drinking the Kool-Aid of just the government like so much of them have done for such a long time.
Yeah. And one of the exciting things is a lot of young people are here. And that's, they talk about the kids being the future. But for conservatism, they truly are the future. And they're the ones that we have to reach.
They are, and they're here in numbers greater than I've seen in past CPACs, and that's very encouraging. I mean, they dominate the downstairs, and they're doing everything from serving people to ushering to signing up for book clubs, conservative book clubs, and working with Heritage Foundation. We're seeing a lot of young conservatives right here, right now.
Right. I know, but they're happy. They're actually enjoying themselves in what they are doing because they believe in what they're doing.
Yep. Also joining us here as part of the Conservative Commandos radio show team, and this is your first official trip with us. This is
first
Greg
time.
Young.
Yeah, first time here at CPAC, enjoying it, and first time here with Conservative Commandos, of course, and great to be joining you. And shout out to everybody there at WNJC 1360 AM, Philadelphia, Delaware, and the Jersey Shore.
And you're a very busy man here, Pastor Greg. I mean, how many hours have you already been on the radio? Like 3?
Yeah, 3 hours already on.
Our 2 hours are going to make it 5. And Greg, Pastor Greg, again, your observation of roaming around CPAC and while you're not on the radio, or people that you've been talking with, guests that you've been
I think it's been very interesting. There's a lot of strategic conversation taking place. CPAC, I think, finds itself in a very unique situation this year. We have 3 factions that are fighting. We have the Trump phenomenon, which everybody's talking about. We have the establishment that's trying to figure out who they are and what they're going to do. And then you have constitutional conservatives. And I would suggest that they have predominantly rallied around Cruz. And so I think it's a very interesting situation for a conservative political action conference to have these dynamics colliding here today.
You know, Lincoln said 150 years ago, let the people know the facts. The nation will be free. And our prayer and what we want to see is more truth-telling by all the candidates. And but it's going to overflow. This is a huge crowd here Thursday. It's probably going to break records come Friday and Saturday. We're just privileged to be a part of something that's a huge wave.
It's historic. JD, I think without question, this is a very historic time in our nation's history, probably unlike anything we've seen in, I would estimate, maybe 200 years.
Well, it's a movement, and it's not just a movement of a specific political candidate or individual. The people are the ones that are really rising up, getting off their couches, voting, deciding that voting is something that needs to be done for survival purposes, and actually beginning to take a stand in what America is supposed to be all about.
Well, and I think that, it's interesting, too. I was with Campus Reform yesterday with Summer Ratcliffe from Campus Reform. We were broadcasting from Heritage yesterday. And really interesting to note the uniqueness of how the younger generation has engaged in this. When you consider that our colleges have for so many years pushed an ideology of socialism, pushed an ideology that is counter to the Constitution, and yet you're seeing a lot of young people rising up and saying, wait, this doesn't make sense, and they're coming out in force. And we're seeing it on both sides. And I think it's a good thing. I mean, for many of us, I'm in my mid-50s. You start to wonder, when will they take an interest?
Pastor Greg, you're exactly right. For instance, with the deficit, with the debt, okay, we're talking $20 trillion in debt. You say you're in your mid-50s. I'm in my mid-60s, okay? I'm not going to live long enough to pay off all that debt. Maybe you won't either, but surely they will. Yes. And that's the one thing I think that maybe a lot of young people don't understand, that they're going to have to learn that all these free things that Bernie Sanders is talking about, all these free things need to be paid for. And they may think they're going to get the free things, but they're going to be the ones that are going to end up paying for it. Also joining us here at the Conservative Political Action Conference is the Patriot, as I like to say, from the battle-born state, the Silver State in Nevada, is their very good friend, Sharon Engel. And Sharon, in you talking with young people, as you do a lot, do they fully understand that the debt this nation is putting on their backs, they're going to have to pay for all these free things that Bernie Sanders is talking about? There is no such thing as a free thing. They're going to have to end up paying for it.
It's a mixed audience out there when it comes to young people. Some understand the debt. Some don't understand the debt, but they certainly understand that they can't get a job and they've got debt from college. They understand that they went to college to get a job and now that job is not there. That's what they understand. It really kind of hits home for them. Then I go into a 7-Eleven and talk to a girl, and she says she's voting for Donald Trump. And I said, that's interesting. Why are you voting for Donald Trump? And she says, well, he's just my first choice because he is talking my language. And I said, well, that's interesting. Who's your second choice? And she said, Bernie Sanders. And I said, why is Bernie Sanders your second choice if Donald Trump is your first choice? And she said, because he can give me what I need for my child. I'm a single parent. She said, also, I think that there are kids that need their college loans paid off. He's going to do that. She started going down every free thing that Bernie Sanders had to offer. And so that's why I'm saying it's a mixed bag out there, Rick. I don't think that every one of our kids is tuned in, and a lot of that has to do with what they're getting in school. You know, if you don't learn history, if you don't understand what history is about, you're bound to repeat it, and we're in that phase right now.
You know, when she's talking about her two favorites being Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders, I mean, they are really at the opposite ends of the spectrum. And one of the things that we've talked about on the Conservative Commandos radio show is the fact that if they end up being their party's candidates, here you have a socialist running against a capitalist. I mean, you talk about issues, when you talk about a dividing line, when you talk about black and white, you don't get any more different than that.
Except for young people. I've heard this from others. I've heard this from adults as you know. Not that these young people aren't adults. Sorry, I've heard this from older adults as well, and they are saying the same thing. First choice Trump, second choice Sanders, and it's just a kind of a disconnect for those of us that are informed. But that's the problem with uninformed voters, isn't it?
Without question. It absolutely is. I think the other part to this, and I saw JD over there nodding his head vehemently, but how many years have we heard college-educated folk can't get a job? College-educated can't get a job.
Well, we're going to address that. We are pleased to have a special guest here at CPAC. And, you know, Bernie Sanders points out that over 50% of the black youth are unemployed. But this is Congressman Todd Rokita of Indiana. And, Todd, welcome to Conservative Commandos radio show.
You bet, JD. It's good to see you again. Thanks for continuing to fight the fight.
Hey, we're talking about youth expectations, unemployment, what socialism has brought about. Talk to that issue.
Well, I'm right out of the cold seat into the hot seat, I think. Yeah. Look, regardless of the age group, the man here is right. I'm sorry I didn't get your name, but
Pastor Greg Young.
Pastor is exactly right. We got to get young people, middle-class people, middle-aged people working again. You cannot do that if your whole mantra is giving away things for free. You just cannot do it. Someone always has to pay. There's always a tax. You cannot do it even by raising the minimum wage. So this idea that you're going to have free tuition and free school and everyone's going to get paid at least $15 an hour, you know what that means? That means you're going to have more kiosks at McDonald's.
Yes.
And McDonald's isn't the end job, the end goal for people, Pastor. It's the start. It's
absolutely
it's the gateway so that you can own that McDonald's one day, so that you can get yourself through medical school or divinity school or whatever you're doing.
Well, whatever it is, sure.
Yeah. And so the Bernie Sanders way of thinking is absolutely backwards, wrong. And there's nothing like a free market and a free economy to raise the standard of living, to raise the level of all boats, so to speak, so that we are the next generation is more prosperous than the current one.
Well, here's an issue you're really strong on here, and we're talking about the deficit. It is a noose. It's a sword of Damocles on these kids.
Right. I mean, I'm talking about generations here, and as we sit and talk today, we are the first generation in American history that by any objective data, and I sit as vice chairman of the budget committee, so I see a lot of data, we are the first generation that's going to leave the next one worse off. It never happened before in American history. And there are a lot of us who just refuse to let that happen on our watch. But it's going to take some big boy britches to be put on, and it's going to take some spending restraint and reform. And we have, the fact of the matter is, the hard truth is we have 10,000 people a day. 10,000 people a day, no fault of their own, but retiring into unreformed social entitlement programs. Medicare, Social Security to be the top two. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, those are the top drivers of our debt. The interest we owe ourselves and other countries is poised to eclipse the third-ranking debt driver here in a couple of years. So we got to get control of it.
Competitive Enterprise Institute has pointed out, they call it the 10,000 commandments, but embedded regulatory costs last year were like $1.88 trillion. America's regulations would be the 10th largest economy in the world.
Holy cow.
Just behind Russia.
I haven't heard that.
Well,
I fear that, but I didn't know the data.
Ahead of India.
Yeah.
Our regulations as an economy. Talk about that. We've got not only shrink the deficit, but talk about this, everybody. The regulations are eating us up.
Well, they sure are. And, this is what happens when you have activists running bureaucracies. Okay? These are people who at every turn, and whatever the issue is, Pastor, this is about a group of people, a subset of us who know in their own mind that they can run our lives better than we can. And one of the great ways to be able to do that is get yourself in a position of power and then regulate the behavior of others, whether that's individuals or businesses or what have you. And that's what's going on here. But I will tell you also that Congress, and I'm part of the new crew that came in at the end of 2010, and this has been going on for decades. Congress is to blame because we do not write. This is something the late Justice Scalia taught me. He was an acquaintance of mine. We had dinner a few times together, and he would beat on me for this. When I would bring up this very thing that you're talking about, JD, and ask the judiciary to bail us out, in effect, he said no. You do not, as Congress, write your laws with enough specificity, and you cede a tremendous amount of power and authority to unelected bureaucrats, and then you wonder why your freedoms are gone. You wonder why you have these costs. We go around way too fast with these bills. We do not, and we literally tell bureaucracies, you fill in the blanks. You write rules to solve the rest of us. We're too busy. We just, no, go do this. And we got to stop that.
Well, isn't that the easy way out? This is Sharon Engel. I'm really glad to meet you.
Good to meet you, Sharon.
And isn't that the easy way out? If you just let the bureaucrat put in the specificities, all you have to do is just name it. Correct. And then you're off the hook, because I voted for that. I tried to reform it, and look what they did.
Yeah. And Justice Scalia really opened my eyes, and he's right. I have empirical proof of it. When I was Indiana Secretary of State, I was the chief election officer for the state. The General Assembly did not give the office, and it wasn't just me, they didn't give the office of Secretary of State the ability to write any rules. So if I wanted to do something as simple as change the length of a chute to a polling place, or something as grand as photo ID at the polls, which we did do, I had to go get a law passed as the executive branch. I had to go to the lawmakers and get it done. I couldn't write any rules. And so it can be done. It can be done.
And I wanted to follow up on your speaking to the cost of Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare. How do you get around this? As now I'm talking to your political side. The left will say that you're trying to take away the Social Security from our senior citizens, and you're trying to push Granny right off the cliff. How do you answer them?
Well, it's a bunch of bunk, and frankly, Mr. Trump, I'm a Rubio guy, endorse him because he has specific proposals on this very thing we're talking about. Mr. Trump does not. In fact, Mr. Trump has, to answer your question, has said, well, we're not going to address those issues. Here's the answer to that. Those that are on the program or on these programs or near to be on these programs, if we act now as a country and reform these programs, those people don't have to be touched. All the reforms that we have put in our budget, and we've been very specific about them, affect people that are 55 years of age or younger. So I'm 46, so people in my generation where we have time to prepare for what the quote-unquote New Deal is going to be. But if we wait, and it could be if we wait just about 10 years to 15 years, we're not going to have that luxury anymore. And we will have to start affecting Granny's check. And so we have the luxury of some time right now if we act now.
If I might interject just one thing. When you were talking about, how you're able to control these issues, but one of the things that the GOP House leadership has done is procedurally made it very difficult for you to make an educated vote, to make an educated decision. I mean, for example, with the omnibus, they put it through in 48, 72 hours?
I can't honestly don't remember how long.
It was.
I wasn't searching for information on that vote. It wasn't a great vote. Now you're talking to a guy who voted against the Boehner deal, but then I lost that vote. Right? We got the higher number, and so the way I looked at that vote, and I thought I had plenty of time to look at the information because we have cleaned that up a little bit. We've had at least 72 hours. I mean, it used to be a lot worse. I looked at that vote as, okay, I fought, I lost, and now I got some good policy riders opportunity available here to control some things. Waters of the U.S. and some others, suspending reforms and policy reforms. And I said, you know what? I'll take them. The analogy I would make is if I voted not to go to war for something, a hypothetical war, and I lost that vote, I'm still going to vote to send the troops in as protected as I can, even though I lost, And so that's how I looked at that. But Pastor, I hear what you're saying, and it's not these midnight votes aren't fair or anything like that. But we have gotten with this new crew in, I think, a lot better. First of all, we scared Boehner straight into doing some of that, and Paul Ryan is more one of us than he was ever one of Boehner. He's my age. He's that 46-year-old, and it's one of those things you don't realize, JD, what a loser you are until you get to Congress and you meet Paul Ryan. He's got the same age, and he's already speaker. But we cleaned that up a little bit, Pastor. It could be a lot better, though.
Is the answer, Todd? I know your time might be a little limited, but is it growth? We've seen, at best, 2% GDP in any quarter under Obama, it seems like.
Growth is certainly part of the recipe for success here, but it'd be disingenuous. I know sometimes Republicans or politicians generally try to say, well, just grow. And I would say if we were in the era of Reagan and he was our president and with the numbers that he had to work with, I'd say yes, we can grow our way out of this debt hole. But the debt hole is so much bigger, so much deeper right now that it'd be a lie for me to sit here and say, yeah, just grow our way out of it. Reform the tax code, let's grow again, and we can absorb all this debt. It doesn't stop the fact that we have 10,000 baby boomers a day retiring into unreformed programs that Reagan didn't have to deal with or anybody else in these numbers. That's cratering these numbers. And so you have got to reform the drivers of this debt if you're going to be honest about solving the problem.
Well, I want to speak now to the Trump phenomena that we're all kind of watching happen here. And to me, that phenomena has to do with tapping into anger that is directed specifically at you. You're in the majority in Congress. You're in the majority in the Senate. The Republicans said, once we got those majorities, we will do something. We will have the courage to stand up and do something. And yet that's not exactly what's been happening for the last 2 years. And I think that that's what Trump has tapped into. Speak to, is there a lack of courage, or what is really going on that's keeping you from doing what everyone promised in 2014.
Well, look, we're still in divided government. I don't think there's a lack of courage. And I'm in the House. I'm not going to speak for the Senate, and I could nearly agree with you there. What they should have said when they were going after the Senate is like, well, we need 60 senators. They never said that. They said, just give us a majority. Well, people are right. We gave you a majority, and okay, and now they're telling me, well, you need 60. Well, they never told us that. So I'll differentiate the House from the Senate in that respect. Okay. I will also differentiate, and by the way, let me preface this by saying I am listening to these voters. I'm going to listen to the Indiana voters the most on this Trump versus Rubio versus Cruz thing. I am not one of these Republicans that disavows or the never Trump bandwagon. If Donald Trump is our nominee, Todd Rokita will be for Donald Trump. Because you know what? From what I know about Donald Trump so far, and I think this is the problem with all America, we don't know enough. But he's better than someone who's likely to go to jail, and he's better than a socialist. Okay? So I'm with Trump. But before that, I'm not going to have to worry about that because I'm with Rubio. But, and not that Marco Rubio and I agree on everything, but here's the thing. This is how the calculus I looked at it in Indiana. I said, you know what? Of these 16 guys and women that are up here, who do I know the best? Who's going to help me help Indiana? And the guy I do a lot of legislation with, most legislation with, the guy I knew the best was Marco Rubio. Ted Cruz, I'm in his office a lot too, but it was Marco. And so I'm with Marco. But again, if it's Trump, then, I'm not going to pretend I know more than these people. They're angry. I get it. I would say that, though, the establishment, I would offer this, that I don't associate myself with the establishment. I don't believe the establishment. You can argue that maybe, but I don't believe it. But I think that they do know, if you look at exit polling, the establishment is government. And I think more specifically when they say we're tired of the government, they're tired of this president. They're tired of this administration. Maybe they're tired of a lot of things, maybe some of us. But I continue to think that I'm going to help solve this problem.
Right now, Congress has a 78.4% disapproval rating.
Yeah.
I've argued that has much more to do with, again, the kind of lack of fortitude to stop Obama's agendas, more so than the ideas that you and others like you have put forward since you came in on that conservative ride of 2010. And would you agree with that?
I know. I'm whipsawed on it. Okay. In the first term and two, I was there, throwing the fit, throwing the hissy, saying no, 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 and then people seem to change, and they say, well, no, get something done. So I tried to get the education bill done. In fact, we got it done. I didn't eliminate the Department of Education, but our bill gets rid of Common Core. No debate. We end Common Core. We get rid of No Child Left Behind. We get rid of the high-stakes man. That was a huge step forward. I think that was a 25-yard pass downfield. It wasn't a touchdown. And so now I'm asking folks, okay, well, do you want me to take the half loaf or not? Do you want me to take progress or not? And I'm honestly, some days I wake up, Pastor, and I think, no, today's the hissy day. They want me, and then the next day I wake up and it's like, no, take the half loaf, And I think the country feels that way day to day these days.
Well,
particularly today, they want to throw the hissy. I mean,
I think it's because we're so far down the road.
Into trouble?
Yeah. I think we're just so far down the road in trouble. If I could just ask one more quick question. With regards to Marco Rubio, I think it was probably at one point between Rubio and Cruz to some degree. If he's not able to win Florida, if he loses Florida, how damaging could that be to him?
I'm not trying to evade. I support. I am the worst politician I know. I mean, I really don't get these numbers. I just know my gut and where I go with and do it. Yeah, if he loses his home state, seemingly the conventional wisdom is he's got problems. So, but I'll let his campaign speak to that. I just know he's the only one in his home state on the presidential field so far that went into Mecca, so to speak, zero ground for the Medicare. Social Security, where more people than anyone else in the other states are retiring into these programs, and he said what needs to be done, and I think that's worth a lot.
Well, back to this anger, this latent anger that's back. I'm hoping to ride that. I'm running against Andre Carson right next door to you, Todd, in the 7th District. And my wife and I are out there in black churches and evangelical circles, and we are seeing a huge turnout of people who will just talk to you on the street and say, this has got to change. And they want to follow a conservative. They want to see limited government. They want to see patriotic congressmen and women up there who will.
So, JD, what do you think then when you're talking to these people? Are they saying say no, throw the hissy, or are they say get something done? What when they come out in the streets and talk with you?
They say get something done. They want proactive conservatives up there in Washington. They want people who will fight to support them, we the people. And something exciting, Todd, you may not know, but it's happening with us, working with the Bicentennial Commission of Indiana, 200th year anniversary. We're the Hoosier state. Yeah. We've discovered who Hoosier was. There was an actual black preacher named Harry Hoosier.
Oh, really?
From the Great Awakening time. And Dave Barton, Wall Builders, and I'm working with other historians. We've got that on our website, and it's playing really well.
Good. I got to go look. There's several theories of what a Hoosier is and what that exactly means. And it's not IU. Of course, I represent Purdue.
Well, it's pretty exciting. Harry Hoosier.
I'm excited for you, and I want to thank you for competition is a good thing, and you have, it's no secret, it's an uphill battle in that district, that particular one. You deserve support. You deserve help. And we all deserve competition.
So does that mean you're going to be endorsing JD and sending some money?
Don't I always? No, I will.
Thank you. We'll get him to write the check before he leaves the table, JD.
I didn't set you up on that one.
Now, this doesn't get us crossways with the FCC, our overseers, doesn't it? Our bureaucratic.
That's true.
Thank you so much, Todd, for coming by.
See you.
Oh, what a blessing.
Appreciate everything you do.
Always.
Thanks, Pastor. Good to meet you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hey, Sharon, you take it away. I'm going to get a picture with Todd.
All right.
Christina, and we'll be right back.
Well, Pastor Greg, it's you and I.
You and me, kid.
All right. And Christina.
Yeah, I can weigh in on some of this too for a little bit. Absolutely.
Well, this has been an exciting time here at CPAC, I think, mostly because we're talking about what I feel are the real issues. Do you feel that way too, Pastor?
Yeah, I do. For the most part, I think that we're talking about real issues. I still think also, though, that we're, again, talking strategically about what these things mean. But when you talk, about candidates and you talk about what they're representing, I'm still waiting for some substantive conversations to take place from some of the circles.
Yes. Well, I agree. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Christine.
don't you think that word Constitution needs to be more and more brought up, even amongst the candidates? And it seems to be being rewritten.
Oh, I think, it's being rewritten both by the executive branch and by the judicial branch.
I agree.
I think you bring up an interesting point because I heard somebody else yesterday talking about that and saying, okay, every third word is the Constitution.
Yes.
And so, there's like, okay, we get it. We need the Constitution. I'm more in league with what you're saying. I believe that we have lost the Constitution on numerous, just from a constitutional perspective. The Obergefell case, in my opinion, was a completely unconstitutional decision.
Yes.
You changed the definitions. How are you, sir? You changed the definitions of the 14th Amendment. You can't change constitutional definitions.
That's right. I agree.
So, and I think that those candidates that are out there saying that, it's the law of the land, don't have a very good handle on the Constitution.
I think everybody needs to go back to school.
I believe so. Welcome. I'm Pastor Greg. Hey, you're listening to WNJC 1360 AM Conservative Commandos. JD, you brought a guest to the table.
We sure have. We brought another fabulous congressman. Welcome.
Well, thanks a lot for having me here. Congressman Steve King of Iowa, representing the 4th Congressional District, most of northern Iowa.
Fantastic. Steve,
one of
welcome.
my heroes and one of my favorites. I have to say that. Thank you.
It makes you one of my favorites, too.
Well, thank you.
And being from Texas, I just want to say thank you for supporting our senator.
Absolutely. It was it was a labor of love, and the effort that we put in Iowa in the early part of this. I looked at all of the candidates, 17 candidates. I had the privilege of knowing each one of them either as a personal way or a business or both in politics. And as we went down through all of those, we're looking for a full spectrum constitutional Christian conservative, and Ted Cruz comes to the top. He's the cream of the crop, and I think a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to nominate an individual that carries those values in his bones. And I finally learned why. I mean, I was taught the Code of Iowa and the Constitution at the kitchen table, and we had the Bible on the end table when I grew up. And my father beat that into me, although I shouldn't say that word, not in a kinetic fashion. He drilled it into me, and so it's in my bones. And I learned that Ted Cruz was taught the Bible and the Constitution at the kitchen table, spoon-fed. And then I understood what makes him tick. Those values that we hold so dear were spoon-fed to him from little on up.
Well, Congressman Stephen King is one of those courageous warriors that we have in the Congress. He's one of those folks that actually puts his feet to his words. And you've been trying to do some things. Tell us what happens when you present something that's just very courageous, is going to do something to change the direction of this country. What happens there to your bills?
Well, while John Boehner was the speaker, the Steve King bills didn't get many legs, to understate it dramatically. And there's a climate change to some degree in the Congress today, and that's the political climate, not the global warming one. But it's shifted to some degree. And here's what it says. This country is a country of ideas. The Congress is most often downstream from the culture rather than always in a leadership position. We do produce leaders in America from time to time that shift the direction of our culture, but most of the time our legislative bodies are reacting to it. And so I try to bring in legislation that forces debate, that causes people to have to examine their principles, and then we always examine them to see if they're constitutional before we ever present them. But it is about changing hearts and minds in the country. And I recall a bill that I introduced some years ago, and I would go around and get signatures on it. And then I would find out that just one particular individual that I'm thinking of had his name removed from it. And I would go back to him and say, but you said to sign you on the bill, and I did, and your name's not on there because you said to take it off. Well, put me on again. So I did that, and it happened again. He took his name off. Third time I pinned him down and said, why do I keep coming back to you, and why do you keep telling me to put your name on the bill, and then your name comes off the bill a week or two later? And he said, well, my staff has convinced me that I'm vulnerable if I stay on as a co-sponsor of your bill, and so they keep taking my name off of it. And, well, why am I talking to you? So I just go get on the radio and talk to their constituents and go to those states and those districts and do the things I can on television, because it's about moving the minds and the attitudes of the American people, more so than it is about changing minds inside of Congress itself.
Well, and from the outside, though, we look at it and we see that there are probably about 35 of you that are really strong and dedicated to we the people. And you do change their hearts and minds once in a while there in Congress and get something through. But how do you talk to the American people about who they should be electing to help you? 35 out of 435 is just dismal.
Yeah, well, it is. And I would describe it this way, is that, first, we're a great country. And we remain the unchallenged greatest nation in the world. And I lay that out in that fashion so then the case can be made, why are we such a great nation? Well, most of those reasons are wrapped up in the Bill of Rights. Freedom of speech, religion, the press, and assembly, and the right to keep and bear arms, and the privacy rights that we have, and the powers that are not enumerated, devolved to the states or the people respectively. All of that, if you take out any component of it, America doesn't become this great nation that we are today. I should have mentioned property rights along the way, as they were before the Kelo decision. Then on top of that, free enterprise. I mean, that's in the citizenship test on the laminated card. What is our economic system? You flip the other side over, it says free enterprise capitalism. The president doesn't know the answer to that question, but there are lots of immigrants that are applying for citizenship that do today. And another thing that makes America great is the legal immigration, the people that had the inspiration that gave them the aspiration to come to America legally, bring with them a unique vigor within them. If there are 10 kids in the family and one of them has the idea to come to America, we'll get the one with the most vigor. And that makes us, that's part of the vitality of our country. All of those are reasons why we're a great country. There are others, but we need to defend each one of the pillars of American exceptionalism. We need to refurbish them, restore them, and that's what is so compelling about what we must do with government and what we must do with our culture and civilization, especially with our families.
I got to ask, you had a record turnout in Iowa, and most states, the GOP caucuses and the primaries have been record in numbers. My wife's sitting right next to me. We got two pastors here at the table. You know, she was good friends with Ronald Reagan. She grew up as a little girl, and Reagan said all through 1980 in that presidential campaign, America needs spiritual renewal. And he championed that. This attack on Christianity, I mean, it's heavy right now. We're experiencing it in all 50 states. Talk to that. Are you seeing a revival, get back to the Constitution, get back to God? Are you seeing that with that great turnout that you saw there in Iowa?
I would say I hope so. If I could have seen the numbers before we went into caucus night, I would have said yes, it is. I think there's something there's much to be said about it. If you go back to October, where Ben Carson was at the top of the polls, much of that was indicative of a spiritual revival and people that want to get behind a candidate that so demonstrated his Christian faith. That's also true with Ted Cruz, and so that message was there and it's strong. I'm a little confused by the evangelical support that Donald Trump has. I just didn't predict that, and I don't quite understand it yet. And I'm starting to wonder how much of this is spiritual revival and how much of this is motivated by something else. It's people are self-identifying, and then we try to figure out who they should be behind because of that. So maybe you can help me with that. How much of the Trump support is truly an evangelical support or a Christian support, and how much of that is wrapped up in some other reason?
Well, I'll speak to that. And we think of Jerry Falwell Jr., we think of Pastor Jensen. There's a lot of large organizations, Christian organizations, that have signed on to the Trump phenomenon. When he did say that he's going to not allow Christianity to be attacked, and he did say he would bring to the Supreme Court to replace Scalia constitutional conservatives. He mentioned a few. So I want to hand this over to my wife, Christina, though, because she is a pastor, and I think she might have a perspective on this whole thing.
You didn't think I was going to come here and do the interviews, but I'm curious. I'd like to understand this better.
We're all trying to understand it. We're trying to get the person that's the best man, or woman in this situation, the one that's going to follow truth. And I think that key word that we're looking at in this hour is truth. And people have a different perspective of the truth, and even the evangelicals. There's a great shakeup in the in all evangelicals right now, and they're having to begin to understand really what is it that biblically we're supposed to stand for, what is it that's going to in any way go ahead and divide politically if we go ahead and stand for this. And Trump is, I believe, he himself is on a journey in this. I've had opportunity to meet him a few times even before this political arena years ago, and I know some of the personal things around him. He has changed. He has surrounded himself with some, quote, godly people is what we call it, in Christianity. And you have to look at it at both ends. Now, it could be used in the wrong way. It could be used to abuse, and it could be used to manipulate. But right now, he's got the people's ear. And we need to understand what people want to hear right now, what the evangelicals are looking for, because they themselves are looking for what is right and what they can be not just comfortable with, but what they're going to be able to go ahead and be accountable and walk in Christianity with in this hour as well.
Well, and understanding this American culture and civilization is a mystery to me, but I'm glad to see, and I believe since Ronald Reagan and before, this nation has moved more faith and more faith into our politics than we had previous to that. And when I go to places like Europe and I hear an elected member of the German Bundestag say to me a few years ago, he said, I inadvertently outed myself as a practicing Christian, and now all of my positions and policies are suspect because they fear that I am guided by my faith. And I say, well, I would fear anyone who was not guided by their faith if they're in public policy in the United States of America.
That's right. I don't know why people get concerned about folks that are in politics that won't lie, cheat, steal, or deceive. What is wrong with that? You can take that to the bank with Congressman Stephen King, that he is going to tell it to you straight. It's going to be the truth. And most people want to trust that. They want someone they can trust more than someone that they can agree with.
Mm-hmm. I think there's two things that are happening, too, with the Trump phenomenon to some degree. One of them, I think, is, and I've heard this from a number of people here at this conference, ideology doesn't matter. The majority of Trump supporters are not concerned with ideology, which I think for us is something that's significantly important. But I think, and to my other pastors here, I think you would agree with this, Barna's research shows that less than 30% of mainline denominational churches have a biblical worldview. They don't teach the Bible from the pulpit anymore. So when we talk about an evangelical identity, there isn't an evangelical identity. They don't believe in absolutes. I was talking to a guy on a taxi coming over here from Heritage yesterday, and he said, well, Jesus was a good man, but he wasn't sinless. Did you hear the story about how he threw the kid off the temple tower and he broke his arm when he was a kid, and then he went and healed him? I mean, these are the kinds of things that are being taught in our denominational churches today. And is it any wonder then that when we say, I was with Jeff Cruer last week, Political Ringside. We co-broadcast out of New Orleans in Texas. And we had the same conversation. And I said, man, is it any wonder, Congressman, that there's evangelicals, quote unquote, going for Trump, when you consider evangelicals don't even know that there's a sinless Christ?
That's appalling to even think of a Christ that's not sinless, and I think of the Jesus throwing the money changers out of the temple. I am grateful for righteous anger, and it's not an excuse to sin.
In Congress, don't we?
But when you get your back up and your blood up over something that is unjust, and you bring to bear the gifts that God's given you to correct it, that's what that example of righteous anger is. And so I think that Christ gave us multiple examples on how to live our lives. And I know I happened to just finish a conversation with an atheist, but I would say even to the atheist, it's worth it to seek to live your life in a Christ-like manner, even if you're not a believer, because the rewards in this life are terrific. And I'm not even concentrating very much about the next life. I just say God will deal with that. If he will loan me the measure of his wisdom for each day that I have a chance to use to go forth and serve and glorify him, and my ask is let me keep doing this with joy. Let me continue to serve you with joy.
Absolutely.
That's my only ask.
That is awesome.
And you just want to hear, well done, good and faithful servant, don't you?
Amen.
Yes. And
well, and our nation was founded, the Declaration of Independence was founded on enumerated problems that they had with King George, and they were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. And it's wonderful we still have that as our backdrop, and it's wonderful that we have Congressman King to support and strengthen the Constitution and the nation that we love and hold dearly.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for coming on the Concerning Commandos radio show, Congressman King. Do you have any closing thoughts?
Well, yes, I do, and that is that we do have a chance here in this country to reflect our values of faith in the ballot box, but we need to reflect it a lot of other ways too. And I'm constantly advised that our church pews aren't as full as they used to be and as they need to be. And just last Sunday, we sit in the fourth pew in the church we're in. I counted 14 little kids ahead of us, and I must have missed 3 or 4 because they were moving around so much. And the joy of those children, a little squeak here, a little peep there, a little cry there, a little talk. And in our church, where our whole family can go there together, 3 sons and 7 grandchildren and 3 wonderful daughters-in-law. And in our church, it's so wonderful because even the little babies get passed backwards across the church. And you don't have to be family to take somebody's baby and hold them during services. So I just say it's so important for mothers and fathers. If you want to serve God, if you want to serve Jesus, if you want to serve this country, have a lot of babies and raise them right. And if you do that, the rest of this will take care of itself. If you have a lot of babies, and raise them right.
Amen. As Pastor Grant, I just want to say again, it was such a pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much for coming on the program.
My pleasure. A treat for me. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for your honored service, too.
Thank you.
And thank you for your courage.
Thanks. All you have to do is believe.
That's right.
Okay, on to the next mission.
Well, we're here on the Concerted Commandos radio show with Congressman Steve King, and we now have a new guest. And, hey, Christina, we have some old friends here at CPAC. We're loving this. We've got Kevin Wade coming in, and we got Daria Novak. So we're having a wonderful night here. So much energy. People are standing behind the barriers there, watching who we're interviewing and what's going on. It's a new day in America, I think. Kind of a springtime. And I want to welcome back to the Conservative Commando Radio Show my friend Kevin Wade. And Kevin, we haven't done radio together for about a year, have we?
And radio hasn't been the same since that sad breakup. It's like Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin, I think. But I'm glad we're back together, and I see the lovely Christina's with us. But in addition to being back on the radio with you and restoring the partnership, Matt Whitaker is with us, yes?
Hey, good afternoon.
Executive Director of the Foundation for Accountability and Civic Trust. He's filed an FEC complaint alleging major violations of campaign finance laws surrounding, you guessed it, Hillary Clinton's shadow campaign. And I understand that you have a piece that might be running on the Hill very soon. I'll let you take it from here.
Yeah, we came out with a op-ed. It's going to land in about 15 minutes on the Hill. And it's calling for a special prosecutor, making a case for a special prosecutor. And really it lays out the case why Loretta Lynch, the Attorney General of the United States, should not make this decision whether to prosecute, whether it's Hillary Clinton, whether it's Huma Abedin, whether it's Cheryl Mills, whether it's Jake Sullivan, any of those folks that were involved in this homebrew email server, as we keep calling it, that the Attorney General is too partisan. The records, her donations are strictly to Democrats. She looks like really a partisan activist if you look at her donation history. And her boss, the President of the United States, has really come out and endorsed Hillary Clinton in so many words. I think the time is now for a special prosecutor, somebody that has broad discretion. Kind of, if you remember Pat Fitzgerald and the whole Scooter Libby disaster, where where they started was not where they ended. We need somebody with that kind of broad discretion to go out and to take what the FBI is going to come up with, which is certainly going to be a prosecutable case. You saw where former Lieutenant Attorney General and my former boss, General Mukasey, came out and laid out 4 different crimes that Hillary Clinton and others probably committed. Similar to Petraeus in storing confidential and classified information off-site, and all the way down to obstruction of justice.
And Hillary Clinton, because she's running for the presidency of the United States, surely wants to have her name cleared in a way that's irrefutable. So what better way than to salvage your reputation than actually request a special prosecutor?
Right. I mean, that is...
if a special prosecutor can find no wrongdoing...
Yeah, a special prosecutor.
No one can.
And that's the thing is that if this Attorney General makes a non-pros decision, so decides not to prosecute, I'm not sure that will give a lot of satisfaction to many people that believe crimes have been committed. And, I don't have all the evidence. The American people haven't been revealed all the evidence. But what I do know is it looks very serious. And what Hillary Clinton and those around her did could be serious, criminal violations of the United States law. And
we're here with Matt Whitaker. He's the executive director of the Foundation for Accountability and Civic Trust. Just to recalibrate our audience, because this investigation's been kicking around for a very long time, and sometimes there's like a crust that builds up in the public perception. Just refresh us. Why is it important that we get to the truth here?
Well, it's hard to go back in history because we live in such a 24-hour news cycle world, but what we know is Hillary Clinton and those around her set up a private email server, and that private email server was unknown really for the time that she was Secretary of State, and then several years after. In fact, people would request emails that Hillary Clinton was on at the time that this email server was running, and the Department of State would say there are no such emails, even though they existed. And so it was hidden for the specific purpose to not shed a light and not allow people to see what was being conducted. And then ultimately, when this did come to light, we only got 50% of the emails that were on that server. And those 50% of the emails were selected by Hillary Clinton and her attorney. And so, there are another 55,000 pages of emails that we don't know what they're about. Now,
what's important about these emails? Why? I don't have your emails. I don't read your emails. Why would I want to read? Why would I want to have access to Hillary Clinton's emails?
Well, as a citizen of the United States, we should have access to all of our public officials' deliberations. There should be no decision that is conducted or made in the darkness of behind the scenes backroom deals. We need light, and because light is the great cleanser on some of these decisions.
And of course, she wasn't just an employee. She was the Secretary of State of the United States government, Secretary of State of the State Department, the ranking diplomatic official. Now, if you're a senior member in the federal government, I will assume that your email is handled with the most careful and secure procedures and protocols, so that people who wish us harm around the world would not have access to those that correspondence. But she went to a private email supplier, not using the secure systems provided by the federal government. And what does that put at risk?
Well, we know for a fact that there are daily attempts to hack into almost every email server, and especially the top diplomat for the United States of America. And, there have been reports that this email server was hacked into. We know that one of her key confidants, Sidney Blumenthal, who we've talked about on this show before, was hacked into, and his emails between him and the Secretary of State were revealed to foreign agents, people that don't want the best for the United States of America. So, I mean, it's the risk and the fact that it was not inside the State Department, but it was outside in her closet or bathroom or wherever they kept it, put the America's secrets, and we're talking about over almost 50 top secret emails, 1,700 plus classified emails. I mean, this is some of the revealing sources and means and all sorts of things that should not be allowed to have foreign agents in foreign countries know about.
And it's likely that the head of the, because this was simply a local, cobbled up, patched together email server, it's likely that our nation's opponents and adversaries around the world were reading her email before she did in the morning. Is that fair to say?
That is fair to say, and it's almost certain that it happened.
JD, you have a question?
Well, to give encouragement to our listeners, the special prosecutors, they have subpoena power. They have a lot better opportunity to get in there and get to the bottom of this than, let's say, congressional hearings. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, they do. I mean, prosecutors and federal agents, can use all the tools that they have in their tool belt. Subpoenas, they can interview witnesses, they can they can compel testimony. But the most important thing in this is really a simple fact, and that is the decision to prosecute. Because I trust the career folks at the Department of Justice and at the FBI are going to do a thorough investigation. It's really ultimately, once that case is put together, does the go forward decision get made, and is it made properly, or are political interests that I fear that this Attorney General will bring to bear because of who her boss is and because of her partisan nature, that will ultimately not be the right decision. And so I would think it would probably give a lot of Americans comfort to know that there is somebody independent that is above reproach, that is above partisan politics, that could ultimately make the right decision based on the facts and the law.
And who is that?
Well, I look at somebody like Michael Mukasey, who's spoken out about this. It would be in that mold. It would be somebody. Mukasey served as a judge. He served as the Attorney General. So I mean, there are people that can do it. Jim Comey, the director of the FBI, quite frankly, is another person that would be above reproach. That he's now the director of the FBI, but he was the former U.S. attorney in the Southern District of New York and a very experienced prosecutor himself. There's people out there that are qualified, that aren't involved in the partisan battles that happen day to day. And so I mean, I think we could find the right person that really both sides in this hyper partisan issue can agree to.
Well, I want to talk about the specific process of an indictment now. So we have Trey Gowdy. He's been looking into this.
Assistant United States Attorney, yep.
Yes. And he says, I think that we're ready to do something. Talk about the process. Where does it go from these hearings that are just disclosure. How do we get to the indictment? How do we get to a trial? What happens? Because I know the American people are crying for even something like an impeachment. We see high crimes and misdemeanors in our government, and we're saying, what are you going to do about it? And all we hear is, well, we really can't do anything about it because the Department of Justice is in the tank for Obama, and they're not going to do anything over there. So tell us, how does this process go forward? Can we get an indictment, or is this just an exercise in disclosure?
Right. Well, on the congressional side, and I respect Trey Gowdy and what he's trying to accomplish, but he's really trying to just show the American people, here's what happened in the Benghazi leading up to it and then in the aftermath. What the FBI is doing is they're looking at the various federal criminal laws that we have, and then they're putting together evidence to determine whether that evidence supports charges for a criminal indictment. Ultimately, working together with the Department of Justice, because only the Department of Justice prosecutors can get into court, they would ultimately take and call and assemble and present to a grand jury, which is a group of just normal citizens, 24 or so normal citizens that will hear the evidence and decide whether there's probable cause that a crime has been committed. And that's the major decision is that the Attorney General is going to have to make as to whether to present this case to a grand jury or not and bring an indictment. There is, I don't know if you've seen, just as an aside, there's been this whole battle by, I think it's Judicial Watch, trying to get the draft indictment out of the Whitewater situation that was drafted up and wanted to be presented to a grand jury against Hillary Clinton. So, I mean, this is a process that Hillary and Bill Clinton are very familiar with, and they were able to stop at one time. But, I mean, at this point in time, it's ultimately going to be the Department of Justice and the Attorney General to decide whether to present this to a grand jury and seek an indictment. And then if there's an indictment, then that would be unprecedented, which this whole private email server is unprecedented. I mean, they can point to the fact that some other secretaries of state had private email addresses, but that's different from running your entire business and the business of the people on your private email server. And so, I mean, I think right now we're at a critical time. I think we're down to probably less than months away from a decision being made, and I think the FBI, based on the news reports that I've heard, is putting together a pretty credible case that individuals will be charged with crimes. I can't say who, but it's going to be somebody in that group of Jake Sullivan and Hillary Clinton and Huma Abedin and Cheryl Mills and others that were involved and transiting and trafficking in highly classified and sometimes top secret information, really off the grid.
Well, and what you just said to me is that it may not happen because we're right up against the Attorney General again and the DOJ. So it really comes down to we the people. What you're telling me is this kind of information that you're giving us here, right here on Conservative Commando's radio show, is going to inform the public, and they're the ones that are going to make the indictment against Hillary Clinton. That's kind of what I'm hearing.
Yeah, this information should be in folks' minds when they make decisions as to who the next president should be.
Matt, Executive Director, Foundation for Accountability and Civic Trust. How can our listeners learn more about what you're up to, lend a hand, donate?
Yep, we're on the website's factdc.org, and they can find us on Facebook and Twitter at FactDC.
Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.
And you are listening to WNJC 1360 AM, Renaissance Radio in Philadelphia. I'm Kevin Wade, joined by J.D. Manier, the lovely Sharon Angle, and in the distance is our show's founder and inspirational leader, Rick Trader, but he's not carrying his share of the load at the microphone this afternoon. I'm Kevin Wade, and I want to thank you for being with us.
Well, I would say that Rick is really sharing more of the load because he keeps bringing in these wonderful guests, and we keep getting such great interviews, and this is just, I think, democracy at work right here at Conservative Commando's radio show, because what we're doing is informing voters about really key issues. I'm just really pleased at all the guests that we've had.
Well, we actually let our guests use their own voice to talk to the voters. We don't do that much translation here, so congressmen speak plainly. Congressman Jody Heiss, a Georgia native, born in Atlanta, raised in Tucker, Georgia. Dr. Heiss graduated from Asbury College and did a lot of things after that. He's a real smart guy. Seminary College. Well respected in his district, and he is here with us today. And Congressman, you can talk about any darn thing you want.
Hey, listen, I'm just fired up to be with the conservative commandos. I tell you, y'all have made my day here, so it's an honor to be with you. Thank you very much for having me.
How long have you been serving in Washington?
This is my first term, so we've got 14 months under our belt, and we're in the fight of our life for our country, I'll tell you that.
That's a fact. Did you find it more fun to fly north or fly back home?
Hey, I have come to love the smell of jet fuel. They're headed south. There's no question about that. It's good to get back to America every chance I can, and that's known as Georgia to me.
CPAC. We're going to have 10,000, maybe record-breaking attendance here. Your thoughts on this convention of conservatives?
I just think it's fantastic. What we're seeing here at CPAC, I think, is being reflected throughout the country. We're seeing record turnouts. People are getting engaged, they're concerned, and they want to turn this country around. And it absolutely fires me up to see this kind of crowd of conservatives show up together. Let's get focused and zeroed in. Let's take our country back.
Well, Congressman Heiss, last Tuesday, I believe you had record attendance, record turnout in voting in the primary, GOP primary. In your district, talk about what you're seeing.
Well, just what we're seeing here. I mean, we're seeing Democrats are having very slow, sluggish, pathetic, and I'm fired up about that turnout, whereas Republicans, and specifically conservatives, they're turning up. And I think that's indicative of the reality. Our system of government does not work without involvement of the people. And we are finally seeing people get involved and step up to the plate, and that's exciting to me, and I believe we've got great potential in this upcoming election.
Well, I'd like to talk about what's stirring this turnout. I know in Nevada at our caucus, we had people coming in that had never been registered before, had never voted before, but now they're showing up to the caucus to vote. What is stirring that, in your opinion, Congressman? What's bringing these people out?
I think people are experiencing every day the reality that our government's getting bigger and bigger and bigger and more intrusive in our lives. Our world is getting more and more unsafe every day. Our economy is on the verge, just hanging by a thread, as we've now surpassed $19 trillion, and it in itself has become a national security issue. Our borders are open. I mean, you look across the board, people are scared. People are realizing that the country we are now becoming is not the country that they have grown up in, and there is a passionate desire to take it back, and I really think that's what's driving this election and the record turnout.
Well, let's talk about your passion in your 14 months in the Congress. Let's talk about what's different than what you thought it would be when you got there. And do you find that it's difficult to get things done, and how can the people change that?
Yeah, it is bigger and deeper and wider and thicker than I think most anyone could ever have dreamed when they first get to Congress. And it is like moving through molasses to get things done. It really is. In many ways, there's been a monster created here. And we have now, for example, agencies that are outside, for all practical purposes, the jurisdiction of Congress, and they are legislating through regulations. And it's extremely difficult to rein in that kind of authority without the House and the Senate and the White House. And because we don't have that at our fingertips right now, it just goes on and on. So we've become a government versus the people rather than America made up of a government of the people.
Well, now, in 2014, many of you in the red wave said, we're going to go and we're going to rein this president in, especially those who are running for the U.S. Senate. They said, just give us the majority in the Senate and we'll make that happen. Well, 2 years later, we haven't seen this happening, so tell us what you found.
And that's been a great source of frustration personally as a freshman because I was a part of that commitment, and I've held personally to my commitment, do everything I could to do that. And frankly, we have passed a lot of things in the House. However, the reality is we've got a Senate that's just has really struggled. When you have to have 60 to even have a debate on an issue, and we only have 54 Republicans, I mean, they're over there having to pull in 6 Democrats just to have a discussion.
Well, now,
and that's very, very frustrating.
Explain that to us, because we out here in the unwashed masses don't understand why majority isn't majority, and if the majority is wanting to discuss something, why can't they?
Well, I don't understand all the Senate rules, but I have hit face to face with the reality of this one rule where they have to have that threshold of 60 before they can deal with issues in the Senate. And, when you have 54 Republicans, but you've got to have 60 in order to move legislation, and Harry Reid has the Democrats voting in a block, and they've not even been able to get 6 to vote on a willingness to deal with issues over there, and that's very frustrating. It is a Senate rule, though. It's not a constitutional issue, and I wish they'd change the rule, and let's get the ball rolling.
And who can change the rule?
The Senate can. And
can they do that by a majority?
I don't know. I would hope so. And,
I would hope so too.
I mean, really, it makes a lot of the whole process dysfunctional right now, and that's very, very frustrating.
I want to break in on the power you have as a congressman. We talked about regulations, and I think you guys passed maybe 255 laws last year. 3,600, though, new regulations are implemented, so about 16 times that ratio. These unelected bureaucrats. What more do we need to defund some of these agencies? Do we just need another wave? Do we need 30 more patriotic conservatives in the House? What do you think? What are we going to do to finally arrest this thing?
Well, I'm all up for getting 30 more conservatives in the House anytime we can get them. So, yes, the answer to that. But the process of reining in these agencies requires the House and the Senate and the signature from the White House. So this thing goes far beyond 30 more conservatives in the House. Mm-hmm. We've got to maintain and push forward in the Senate, and we have absolutely got to take the White House. Without those 3 elements, we cannot rein in these agencies that are out of control the way we need to.
And there's a law out there, isn't there? The REINS Act, which would say, hey, anything over $150 million that's scored to have economic impact has to be up and down vote. The agency can't do a thing without Congress saying yes or no. Oh, that's right. Listen, America, we get the presidency. That's something that Congressman Heiss is going to see, and Congressman Neer and all the others that we want to see happen.
Right.
It's close. It's close.
And again, I just say again, we're in the fight of our life for our country, and I just have to believe in my heart that people are realizing that, and that we're seeing record turnouts as a result. But this is not the time for frustration to the point of throwing in the towel like never before. This is a time we've all got to dig deep and give it everything we've got if we're going to turn this thing around.
Well, back in my district, there used to be a hotbed for high-paid jobs. I mean, it was just a wonderful place to work and make a life. The jobs are gone now. Food stamps are a way of life. And now everyone's getting sick with heroin. So now the community's sick. No jobs, and they're sick, too. So we'll see what happens in November. Congressman, thanks for doing what you can. Appreciate you being with us here.
Well, it's a pleasure to be on with y'all. Thank you for all you do. We're all in this thing together, and your voices are extremely important. Keep it up. Keep the torch ablaze.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
JD, like one top guest after another.
It has been exciting, and we have more to come. And we're just getting started, Kevin.
Scott Garrett, who's with us. Well, he's almost with us. He's brushing his hair. Bringing camera to you to be able to see that.
I think he might be signing an autograph or two.
I don't blame him.
How was your drive down here to D.C. in the Beltway today?
Except I understand it's going to snow tonight, and I had completely washed my hands of having to pick up the snow shovel again, and I thought that we were kind of beyond winter, but it's supposed to be 1 to 3 inches of snow overnight. So other than that, I'm glad it's not snowing now.
It's not. Remember last year, the first day of CPAC last year, it snowed.
With us right now The Honorable Scott Garrett, U.S. Representative from the Garden State of New Jersey. Little intro here. In January 6, 2015, Congressman Scott Garrett was sworn into the U.S. House of Representatives representing New Jersey's 5th Congressional District. He's burnished himself with a reputation as a leading advocate of tax relief. Good. Pro-growth economic policies. Better. Earning awards and accolades. We'll see about that. But right now, Congressman Scott Garrett, thanks so much for being with us on the Conservative Commandos radio show.
It's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Kevin, if I could just say, I've been doing the Conservative Commandos radio show for 6 years.
Yes, sir.
And people have said to me time and time and time again, wait, you're doing a conservative show from New Jersey and you've never had Congressman Scott Garrett on? Are you sure you're conservative? So it's great to have him with us today.
I'm happy to be with you.
Thanks for making time to be with us.
Good.
What's your take of CPAC so far?
It's always a great convention. It's a lot of good people here. And, of course, one of the things you notice as soon as you walk in the doors here is all the young people.
Sure.
And that's one of the great aspects of it. To say, look at all these great young conservatives out there. There is such a misperception of where the conservative movement is in this country. And when you come through CPAC, you see that it's a growing movement. It's a well-founded movement, and it's a young movement. So that's great to see.
What's the mood back home in your district? What's the mood back home?
On what topic?
On any topic of interest to the folks back home.
Sure. So
I understand the price of gas is down. They're probably happy about that.
Okay, we go there. They are. I'm happy about that because I am basically cheap. And I'll skip one gas station over to the next, at one corner.
We need more of that in Washington.
Well, we do. I'll save a penny over here versus that station over here, and I do bring that philosophy to Washington. I always say that we should treat the federal budget like a family budget, and just like you and I say, I can have to live within my means. I can't spend more than I take in each week or each month. So should Washington treat it that way? But they don't. And I've served on the Budget Committee now for as long as I've been in Washington. I am the longest serving member of the Budget Committee. But very few people take it that approach to Washington, unfortunately.
Have you seen any program that you've watched closely actually spend less money in the next year?
Yeah, that'd be hard pressed. I'd have to scratch my head to come up with that. Because here's the way it works in Washington. Day after day, people will call you up to meet with you in your office. And why do they want to meet with you? They have a program. It is the best program. It is the most essential program. It is the program that without the federal funding, it would collapse and would never survive again. And that's why they come and say, please fund my program and fund it at a higher level. I get no one. Let me think. It's been I can't think of the last time of coming into my office and saying, please eliminate my program, cut its spending, or even for that matter, coming into office and say, here's a program or that's a program that we should eliminate. People don't do that. People don't come into Washington and meet with you representing the average person, the taxpayer, unfortunately.
Sharon Angle has a question.
I sure do. Rick gave you a very good recommendation. He said you were the only true conservative in New Jersey that's serving.
Fortunately, there are a lot of true conservatives in New Jersey. Thank goodness. I guess, but for that, I would not be elected for the last several terms in office. But it is there are few and far between, I guess, when you look around Congress, how many true conservatives there are, and certainly less in the Northeast. I don't know why that is, but that is.
And how do you relate to your colleagues? Because we're seeing that not everyone in Congress is a true conservative.
Yeah, well, this is what happens back at home with the press. The press is not necessarily one of my greatest supporters. The press will often point out that I am standing alone on a number of on bills. They'll say, out of the 13 or now 12 members of Congress in New Jersey, one voted this way, and the 11 rest of them voted that way. And I will have a justification for it. Usually on a spending bill, it's because we don't have the money for it, or at the same time, maybe most importantly, it is something that the federal government should not be engaged in. I'm a true strict constructionist when it comes to the Constitution. I believe that our powers are limited in Washington. That's what we should be spending our dollars on. And so if you have a program that doesn't fall into parameters of that, I look long and hard before I would vote yes for it.
Well, thank you so much for protecting my pocketbook. I appreciate that.
Sure, and that's really what I think every member of Congress should be thinking about. It's really easy when you're on the floor and there's a good program coming down that you're about to vote on. Help this group, help that group. There's lots of problems out there, right? And it's really easy to say, I'm going to solve all these problems with this bill, not realizing that there's a cost to pay, and there's somebody like you or the people listening to this program right now who end up paying for that program. It's easy to look compassionate if you're spending somebody else's money, I guess is what I'm saying. And that's what a lot of people in politics want to do, is be compassionate with your money.
Boy, I want to break in, though, and we've had some congressmen on. It's been tremendous afternoon. But let's talk about national defense.
Okay.
And the hollowing out of the military. I know back in my district, people are very concerned. They're very concerned to what happened in Iran when they boarded our ships and held hostage our men.
That was disgusting.
Talk a little bit about what you see the next Congress and the potential to reclaim our military, reconstitute.
So we have had almost 8 years now of an administration that has had absolutely no regard for the military and no regard for what the needs are for a strong military to defend our country and to have a sustainable position in the world stage as a superpower. And it's because of that you've seen what has happened. It's because of that we've seen the budget process go through, where they wanted to gut it and strip it out as far as the sustainability portion, meaning that, we'll spend money for OCO, and I don't want to get into the weeds here, but basically for some of the funds overseas, but we're not going to spend the money that we need to backfill the Defense Department, make sure that the re-equipping, resupplying, the upgrading of the military is done, and that's what this administration has been pulling the carpet out on. I serve on the Budget Committee, like I said, and we're all about making sure that is done and it's done right. And this is one area I'll just get into in one little bit of weeds. On any area of government, when you spend $1, you want to make sure that it's spent effectively. So whether it's a social program, an educational program, you name it, if the government is spending on it, right or wrong, you want to make sure that dollar goes to the right place. On defense, I have been one that has been pushing the Defense Department to come forward with a fully auditable budget. They have not been able to do that for the last decade or more. And I want to make sure that every dollar that we do spend on defense actually goes where it's supposed to be going in the most cost-effective manner. And why is that? Because we want to make sure that our young men and women overseas have the right equipment, have the right training. And I will continue to push the Defense Department until they get that done and get it done right.
Big issues. Abraham Lincoln ran 150 years ago, and he had big ideas. Kevin, you've talked about that as you've run for Senate. I work with some friends on the EMP coalition with Frank Gaffney, but North Korea just launched another satellite, and they're launching ballistic missiles. Half capability coming to our shores. What do you think of SDI? If we get a new president, a conservative president, we go forward with a stronger House and a stronger Senate. I'm all for reviving SDI.
Wow. That reminds me of a conversation I had on that issue. Oh, my gosh, that was back in the beginning of the Reagan administration. And when he was talking about it back then, people were scoffing at him and saying, that's just a ridiculous idea. We're never going to be able to develop it. And then Reagan came along, got elected, and took up the mantle on that, and, of course, proved the effectiveness out of it. The technology, of course, that's how many decades ago? 80, 92? That's 3 decades ago. Wow. The technology during that time has advanced tremendously. The abilities that we should be able to get in that area has advanced tremendously, but we're not necessarily putting all the resources into it that we should be in order to bring it up to the 21st century technology. I've seen some of the studies on what could be done that we're on the cusp of providing, and we're just not quite there. And that's, again, goes back to my last comment. This administration is, as you put it, hollowing out our military.
How about hollowing out NASA? Comment about that.
NASA, yeah, well, I think that's always one of the pet projects of a lot of us who grew up in the 60s and saw the potential for what it could be, what it was, and what it could be in the future. I like the aspect that that we have developed in this country from the private sector aspect, that we actually have now competition that's out there. And I think, to me, as somebody who just sort of likes that sort of space travel ideas and grew up on that and was a tinkerer. And remember the little, what were they? I think they were called Nesty rocket engines that you used to shoot your own rockets up with as a kid, And so I was one as a kid doing that. And so I look at with awe at NASA and what they've been able to achieve, but see so much more this country can achieve as well, both at the NASA front, but then the private sector front as well. It's amazing.
Well, back in my district, and I mentioned this to the previous guest, two big issues are, one of the final remaining great places for a blue-collar guy to work is closed. About 400 jobs. We've lost car plants, steel plants, you name it, they're gone. So people are now going on to food stamps as kind of like that's the rest of their career, is to be on food stamps. Yeah. And now, having lost these jobs, which causes entire neighborhoods, entire zip codes to start to get blistering paint and sagging roofs because people don't have money. Now the heroin's coming in, and their kids are getting sick.
Yeah.
Now, is there anything Washington's working on about these two problems? Because these actually touch very much home, and these are drive votes on an emotional basis, far beyond party registration, almost like a tsunami effect, actually.
So if you watch what happens on the floor, you'll hear the Democrats saying, "Why aren't we doing anything about your first issue, which is jobs? Why aren't we doing anything about keeping jobs here in the United States?" And yet they're oblivious to the fact, or they're blind to the fact, that we are moving legislation. We, matter of fact, just moved a half a dozen pieces of legislation out of my committee this week, and we've moved bills through the floor called Jobs Act 1.0, working on Jobs Act 2.0, and so on. Now, they're not the same sort of jobs bills that the Obama administration has. Those are jobs where you spend $1 trillion of taxpayers' money, of all of your money, to make work type jobs that are only here today and gone tomorrow, the so-called shovel-ready jobs. We're trying to create true private sector jobs so that the factories can actually stay in this country, that people can actually have jobs and once again restore the American dreams. The dilemma is, as you well know, we pass these bills out of the Senate, out of the House, excuse me. They go over to the Senate. When Harry Reid was there, I always said the Senate is where all good bills go to die. And even though Senator McConnell's there and Republicans control the Senate now, the Senate is still where all good bills go to die, including the jobs bills. Why? Because Harry Reid still has his thumb on it and is still able to block those jobs bills from going forward. But there's a number of things we can do to recreate a more dynamic economic growth in this country. It's been a long time since we've had above a 3.0 GDP growth rate in this country. I can't remember how long it is. I just saw that stat. But until we get above a 3.0 growth rate again, you're going to have that dilemma that you're talking about, which leads to some of these other social problems.
And what about heroin in the streets? We don't grow heroin in my district. It comes from other places, generally outside the country.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of it coming in. I mean, maybe this doesn't happen in your district.
No, it is.
But in our district, it's really a tragedy. It's like an epidemic.
Yep.
I can go 1, 2, 3, 4, name people who had responsible lives a year and a half ago.
Really?
Yes, really. Well, you ask around when you get home.
That is sad. No,
but since we don't produce heroin in my district, so I wonder if there's any role for the federal government in this.
Well, there is, as far as your point of saying where is it coming from. It's not being grown in your district. I don't think it's being grown in my district either. I know it isn't. And so where is it coming? It's coming through the borders. So politicians don't want to talk about that one issue, immigration, it seems to many times. But because they don't want to talk about, the borders. They don't want to talk about security along the borders. But there's a lot of other issues that touch upon border security besides immigration. It's drug trafficking, it's gun trafficking, it's human trafficking. And so if we can't come to a perfect consensus on immigration, maybe we can come to a consensus on the only time you can say you're a sovereign nation is if you can define where your borders are and decide what can come into the country and who can't and what can't. We should be able to say, these are our borders, we're a sovereign nation, we're not going to allow illicit drugs, we're not going to allow guns, human trafficking to occur over our borders, and we have to take back and reclaim our borders. And that's a role for the federal government.
Well, I guarantee in my district, people are talking about heroin, jobs, and they're talking borders. And they are. And if you don't talk about, on this show, we don't talk about what people care about at home, they change channels.
Yeah. No,
and I think that plays out in a lot of different ways. They change channels.
Yeah, they are. And they're talking about these issues back at home.
And terrorism. If we secure the borders, we can keep terrorists from coming. Kevin, wasn't just about a year and a half ago you were down on the border and a rancher's daughter gave you some Arabian currency?
No, Omani currency found in the backcountry. That's not really of interest for most people, except back where I live. But yeah, I mean, there's a whole different conversation taking place around the country, and if people pick up on what that conversation is in the homes, in the zip codes, in the neighborhoods, in the developments, I mean, then you can really make a bond with the people because we have problems in this country.
Right. No, I agree, and I think that's why you see
and with all due respect, there's no one in my district who produces heroin. There's no one in my district who wants to close down the last place to work. There's no one in my district. Do you understand? Yep. These are not problems that people in my neighborhood made. They relied on other people. Yep. They picked other people. They trusted other people.
Exactly. Good point.
Well, I think to that point, we saw Donald Trump really tap a nerve, didn't he, on this whole issue of illegal immigration. So it is the primary topic, I believe, of this whole election cycle. What's going on in Congress that they're not listening to? I mean, the voice is loud. It seems to me it's almost deafening. What's going on there? Why aren't they listening, or are they listening and they're unable to do anything? What's going on?
They're listening, and some of us in Congress are as frustrated as the raw nerve that's been picked out there, as you say, by Donald Trump as well. That's one of the reasons why we actually saw a change, not just on this issue, but a change in our leadership in the House. As you know, we have a change in leadership. John Boehner is no longer the Speaker. That all came about in part to a small group of us, literally a half a dozen or so of us, who got together at the beginning of last year and saying the American public is frustrated. What is happening in Washington is frustrated with the House, and we needed to have a change. And it took us a little while. It took us during about half a dozen months of last year, but you had a change for the first time, I think, in the history of the government. You had a Speaker of the House who stepped down, not because of health, not because of he was indicted, not because of other reasons. He just stepped down in the middle of a term. And now things are turning around, I think, for the better. Everything's perfect, and it can't be Pollyannish about it, but I think it's certainly turning around for the better. And my hope is that Congress will become more responsive to those points that you're raising. We have passed some legislation in the past on toughening the borders. As I go back to the last comment, they usually die in the Senate, though. And that's why I have less hair today than I did when I came here years ago.
Well, and to your point about changing leadership, many of us watched that from afar.
Yeah.
And we thought someone like you or Louis Gohmert or Stephen King, even someone of the conservative brand, should be that speaker. What happened there?
So you figure it's just like if you're having a Thanksgiving dinner with your extended family, right? And you all don't agree on any topic at one of those dinners, and there's some group over here at the dinner table that's, I'll say, far left, and there's some group over here on the far right on a particular topic. They're not going to be the one that gets the drumstick at the end of the night. It's going to be some sort of more of a compromise candidate. So just as you could say, why didn't somebody, if I was on a different radio program, why didn't somebody from the more moderate, liberal wing of the party get it? Well, because the far right wouldn't agree with that, right? And so you ask, why didn't somebody from the more conservative segment of the conference get it? Well, that's because people from the more moderate wing probably would not have voted that way. So you get somebody more towards the center, and we got it, Paul Ryan, who was our vice presidential candidate last time, and the conservatives came around him at that time. He's a very wonky guy, which means he's in the weeds on a lot of budget issues, smart on those issues, and we're putting our trust that he'll lead us in a good direction.
Well, we've enjoyed so much having you here on our
It's been
show,
fun.
Congressman.
I got to come back now.
Congressman, thank you so much. I hope this is the first time of many. I am sorry it's taken 6 years, but thank you so much for joining
anytime
us.
you want to come on the show. We'll make a window for you.
Fantastic. I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks
Thank
so much.
you so much.
Take care.
Take care. God bless. And you are listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show, coming to you live from the Conservative Political Action Conference in Washington, D.C. And we're going to get our next guest in here. And rejoining us, actually, running away to get our guest, is running over to get our guest, is the newest Conservative Commando here with us is Pastor Greg Young. And Pastor, please introduce our next guest.
Absolutely, Rick. Well, first of all, it's just great to be a part of the Conservative Commandos at WNJC 1360 AM. This is just phenomenal, and I'm really excited to have with us my dear, dear friend who joins me on Chosen Generation every Monday, and will be joining me live starting this Monday on my Chosen Generation Conservative Commandos segment.
At what time?
That is going to be at noon. She'll be leading us off on Mondays at noon.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, and I want to welcome Megan Barth, ReaganBaby.com.
Thank you.
Who is just fighting the good fight.
Fighting the good fight.
Absolutely.
I don't know what else to do.
Well,
I was born to do it, I guess.
That's it. That's the call. And by the way, we just want to be sure and say hello to Mr. Doug Barth.
Oh, yes.
Which is Dad.
My sage.
Yeah, absolutely.
Taught me everything I know.
Just want to say hello to him right now.
Hi, Dad.
You know, we've had speeches today. Mm-hmm. I know you've been doing a lot of interviews today, but I also know that you've been doing a lot of mingling today. As you've done that, anything standing out to you?
You know, I think we mentioned it before, and the one thing that keeps standing out to me is the amount of camps that are here within the GOP. I've gone to CPAC now for, I guess it's 7 years in a row. I started in 2009, and the reason I came to CPAC initially was because I was trying to find conservatives. Because after the election,
this would be the place actually to meet conservatives.
And after the election of Barack Obama, I said, what in the heck happened to the GOP? Where are my conservative comrades? Where are the conservative commandos? So I came looking, and it wasn't so split at that time, meaning, you know, we had kind of, at that time, obviously, we had just lost, so there was a lot of unity speak in the party. There was a lot of how are we going to basically pick ourselves up, dust ourselves off, and fight the next fight. Now what we see is we've lost, another election. Barack Obama now is a 2-term president, and after that one, we kind of understood what our mission was, and that was to unite to beat the left. And this CPAC is a little different in that it seems like there's so much division between the Cruz camps and the Rubio camps and the Trump camps. And so I would really like to understand, maybe while I'm here, as to how are we going to unite again to beat the left, because that is the goal.
Well, I believe we will. I mean, this is a Super Bowl Sunday, okay, and everyone's watching their team. But when the clock ticks down to zero, we'll come back. Most of us will come back together again.
I do hope so. I hope that is the case.
Because the alternative, Megan, is so much worse. We have to come together.
Well, we have to. However, there is a contingent, and a very public contingent, especially when National Review takes out a cover story to stop Trump. And now we have a Never Trump movement going on in Twitter. And, should he be the nominee? And I've said this before on the earlier show, there have been many conservatives like myself that have held their nose and have gone to the polls, whereby National Review had supported the moderates. Okay, but this time around, they're afraid of his moderation, or they're afraid of perhaps he's a liar, or they're afraid of what his convictions are. I get that. But at the end of the day, we need to unite, because we still have to defeat the left. And my job has always been, or at least my mission and my goal has been to defeat socialism. And what got me off my couch was not only the Tea Party movement, but I saw that universal health care was on the horizon. And that's really why I got off my couch and started fighting, because as Reagan said, the first step towards socialism.
Sure, the Marxist rule is take over the healthcare system first and foremost, because you determine life and death. If you own the healthcare system, you determine life and death. And they've succeeded in doing it. But, I mean, Kevin, do you think they really intended for Obamacare to succeed?
No.
No, I think they intended to have control. I think the quality of service, whether, quote unquote, it would succeed or not, wasn't first on their priority list. If it doesn't succeed, their default was to go to a single payer system, for which we already have a huge example. It's called the VA system, where some people get pretty good care and some people get none. And who do you go to complain, because they all work for the same boss? Now, I think America has caught on to what that was all about. I think Obamacare is on its last legs. I mean, the exchanges are collapsing. The polled percentage of people who still support it and find value in it is very low. So it's going to go. But this division you were speaking about, I mean, we're just free living ad-libbing it here.
Yeah.
Most of those divisions go away once the candidate is selected. I've had probably a conversation not different than your own, both of you, with many, many other good-hearted, stout conservatives. I happen to believe that I, in fact, am the perfect conservative with the perfect conservative views. Now, my problem is all my friends have their own opinion. And I have to respect that difference. Now, regardless of who will be the president, almost regardless of who's going to be our presidential candidate, it won't change my conservative views and values at all. So maybe I can get with someone who's not perfect, maybe far less than perfect, but maybe if my house is on fire and all I hold dear is at risk, I just want a firefighter in there right now. I'll worry about where he went to school later.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that's the way I see it right now.
Well, it's funny because as conservatives, we've always championed our individual liberty as well as our individual identity. Right? We might all be conservatives, but we're not a monolithic group. We might vary in positions, but yet there is this cause that's going on within the conservative movement, the Never Trump movement, that is basically saying these are conservative values. These are the ones that must be in place for you to be a true conservative.
Oh, I still hold those, Megan. I still hold those values.
Well, yeah,
but that doesn't mean. I just don't want the best firefighter to come through the door at the moment to put the fire out.
Well, no, and I hear you, and I absolutely hear you. But what I am saying is that because we are individuals, because we are not a monolithic group, because we are not like the left, whereby we are a mob, right? We all have our individuality. That's what conservatism is about, the individual, not the group, and not the collective.
And hence, if National Review, I think I see where you're going with this.
Yeah, go ahead.
If National Review says, well, for you to be a true conservative, you must think exactly as we do it on the editorial board of the National Review, and we've made your pick for you. That doesn't work. Okay, not with independent, free American citizens.
People. That's right.
I understand the compromises I make when I go to Burger King instead of McDonald's. I'll make that choice.
Well, and I understand the compromises that I have made as a conservative over the years when the GOP kept giving me moderates. Okay.
Which is there's no question that is exactly what we've had. I mean, Robert Dole was a moderate, John McCain was a moderate, Mitt Romney was a moderate. That's right. And I think we lost. Because people, and there were people who didn't show up. They didn't say, it wasn't an I'm not going to vote for Mitt crowd or the never Mitt crowd. Right. It wasn't a crowd. They just plain said, we're not.
It just didn't move them enough.
Yeah, we're not.
Now there's a circumstance, and we all know, where people are lined up around a block trying to get in to vote or take part in a caucus, and they say, I've never been out like this before. Show me what I have to do. And that's the exact opposite of what happened with Mitt Romney. And people said, well, I probably should vote, but the game's on. Or what? He couldn't move people to go and do what they had done before. And now there's a guy who's bringing in not only some, but millions of new people.
Well, I think the other part to this, though, because I follow the never Trump argument and the caution as we move forward in that. But I also would say we're still in the primary, okay? I'm an Oakland Raider fan. I've been suffering for years.
I'm a Bears fan.
Yeah.
I feel you.
Okay? I've been suffering for years. Well, my grandparents were season ticket holders for the first 18 years of the franchise, okay? And so I grew up with them. You know what I'm saying? And so I'm long-suffering as a Raider fan. Every fall, you pull out that silver and black, and you hope, and you root, and you still hate the Broncos, okay? And you just, until the Super Bowl, and then you find a team that you like, and you root for that team.
That's right. And I just hope that this Never Trump movement decides not to sit out, because we may need, just like we needed the evangelicals, right, to vote for Romney, and they chose to sit out, and that's fine, okay? But we had a Barack Obama as a two-term president. This isn't a very important election, and I see this election as the time for choosing, and I've said this before. We either go up or we go down. This is no longer about, at least for me, about party. This is about the direction of our country. If we have a socialist in the White House, we no longer have a constitutional republic. They will do everything that the progressives have done in the last 7 years to undermine the Constitution, to create it into a living organism or document, and they have the opportunity to seat 3 judges. If the GOP was a conservative party, the GOP would have come out in support of Cruz. They wouldn't have used their main guy to bash Cruz. If the GOP was a conservative party, Cruz would have a lot more endorsements. If the GOP was a conservative party, they would have built a wall a long time ago.
And the people in my district wouldn't be getting sick from heroin addictions.
Are you in New Hampshire?
No, it's all over the country.
Well, I know, but New Hampshire has a huge
overdose. All over the country.
I know.
All over the country.
Yeah.
And if there is one responsibility that legitimately resides with the federal government as defined in the U.S. Constitution, it's to secure our borders.
That's right.
Yeah.
There's no one in this country who produces heroin. No one. There's no state. There's no company. There's no family. There's no
we have
cult.
no opium fields.
We have no opium fields. We don't grow poppies in those quantities.
No,
the federal government can't secure the borders to keep the poison out of our zip codes.
That's right.
And that's a personal thing. That's not an R thing or a D thing. You don't have to go and say, I believe in the 10th Amendment, the enumerated. This isn't one of those issues. It's your brother is sick. He's never going to be the same again. Mm-hmm. And you come down to Washington and you hear what these guys talk about. Now you know why there's a line 2 blocks long waiting to go into a caucus to do something they've never done before. That's the revolution. Mm-hmm. Now, is that potential candidate, and it could be somebody other than Trump, is he he's not a perfect man. Of course he's not. I haven't met any.
There is no such thing.
I haven't met any who got in like the quarterfinals for being a perfect man.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But he's on to something, and I believe if he does one thing, one of his promises, that's 10 more things than have gotten done in the past
30 years.
In the 6 years that the Republicans have had the House of Representatives. Yeah. I mean, that's another thing. They talk the game. They campaign as true conservatives. Secure the border, right? Except they won't defund the amnesty program.
Well, and that's
I'm against Planned Parenthood. We're going to stop Planned. We're going to send a penny there, except they keep sending pennies there. We're going to block the deal with Iran, except they don't. So what good is someone who's a conservative in the way that a character in a high school play can read a script? What good is that if they don't actually serve as a conservative when they come to Washington?
Right.
And then they get up on their horse telling me how I should believe that the National Review, as an example, knows what conservatism is and who represents it. Give me a break.
Well, that's why I have a problem with Paul Ryan. Like, he's supposed to be the conservative champion. He's supposed to be the fiscal hawk, and the very first thing he does is pass omnibus. I don't need to hear about conservatism from someone who passes omnibus and funds every single progressive agenda that was sitting on his desk.
Because it was a tough deal to put together. Give me a break.
Oh, please. I'll give you a tough deal.
You go back to your neighborhood, and you go back to your neighborhood, and you can share an angle sitting next to me, listeners.
Oh, you know what?
The great Sharon Angle from the wonderful Silver State of Nevada.
Well, welcome.
And when she goes back to her neighborhood, there's small businessmen who really have a problem working on a budget. Okay, because their health care costs have gone up, because their customer base has gone away, because they have to compete not just with the people down the road, they have to compete with people around the world. Okay, now that's a budget problem, not what Paul Ryan inherited.
Well, we just heard, though, from our congressman that they couldn't help it. You've got people on the right, you've got people on the left, and you have to pick someone in the middle to get everybody to go along. How do you feel about that run into the middle? I mean,
when you're in the middle, you get run over. That's something that
Say that again.
When you're in the middle, you get run over.
Say that again.
When you're in the middle, you get run over. Pick a side. Get out of the way. Pick a side and get out of the way.
You get run over from both directions.
Well, and I would like you to say, I have a friend who says that the Democrats win because the Republicans stay home. Now, he's talking about the rank and file that are talking about, if my guy doesn't make it through, I'm not going. I'm not going.
Yeah.
Talk to that.
Well, I think that's the problem. Like with conservatism, sometimes we're stubborn, right? Because we have this conservative checklist that if someone does not check off every single box, he's not conservative enough. We have to stop. I shouldn't say that. I think of it more as ideology. Okay? This is a war of ideology. This is combating the left, the radical left. This is the party of Marx. This is not the party of JFK any longer. They have incrementally trashed our Constitution, and they've done so purposely. Oh, just give me a little bit. Oh, just give me a little bit more. Until they have the whole entire piece of the pie, right? And then they can do whatever they want with the pie under their control. So that's why I have this problem with this absolutism, right? That we have to check every box in order to be worthy of the vote. And that's the problem we have, right? Like I said, Barack Obama would not have been a second-term president if everyone would have gotten off the couch and voted against the ideology. The problem was that Mitt Romney did not expose the ideology.
Right.
The press did not expose the ideology. Of course, Sean Hannity tried. Of course, there were certain people in Fox News. But it wasn't pushed enough through the lies to make it the truth.
Now, I'm glad that you mentioned Mitt Romney because he's come out very strong today.
Yeah, what happened?
Where was that in 12?
Yeah, where was all that fight and bluster?
He heard that Monica Crowley wasn't in the room, so he felt bold today.
Well, it just speaks to your point. We Republicans have a penchant for chewing on our own rather than going after the real opponent in this because of their ideology. And we wanted to see that Mitt Romney 4 years ago, didn't we?
We did. We did. And like I said, I didn't have a chance to watch the speech. I saved it, and I'll watch it later. And I've heard about it, of course. But from what I understand, he just came out swinging, attacking, another capitalist. And I'm thinking, what are you doing? Where was this Mitt years ago? He may have won if he showed a little bit of gravitas.
Megan, it might be that he finally has something worth defending.
What, his power?
And it wasn't
his connection?
It wasn't us in 2012,
exactly.
or he would have shown that same passion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
What
the world
are you saying,
is changing.
Kevin Wade?
No, the world is changing in Washington. It's changed for most of us years ago.
Well, I think it speaks to, and we talked about this earlier, there's 3 factions in this. You've got an establishment faction, you've got the Trump phenomenon faction, and then you've got those that identify as conservative constitutionalists. Mm-hmm. And I hear what you're saying, what both you and Megan are saying about don't tell me who I'm supposed to vote for. But I remember going back in history and looking at the writings of our founding fathers in situations just like this, where they said, wait just a minute, this was the intent of the Constitution. This was the intent of the Declaration. Now, there were those who argued that, who said, no, we felt as though this was the intent. But there were well-written pieces that were published in papers in these kinds of debates. I would just from a different view say that the National Review was simply saying this is a version of conservatism that we want to clarify and bring back into play. Now, I agree. They went after Trump. There's no question because it was mentioned in there. They headlined it that way and so forth.
They wouldn't have had any hits at the website if they went after Mitt. That's why people talk about Trump. Well, if they talk about each other, no one is going to pick it up. They have to somehow reflect in the glow of who this personality is.
Well, and I have to somewhat laugh because I've been hearing about, well, Trump is going to undo all the conservative progress we made. Where is the conservative progress? Where is it? Because where is it? Honestly,
maybe in Washington they think that rolling out Common Core was a conservative
step. Progress, and we held the power of the purse, and we relinquished it. So please tell me where the conservative progress is.
You only get to keep what you're willing to fight over, Megan.
And I think that Pastor Greg made a really good point here. We're in the primary. Primary is for rooting for your candidate and making sure that you do the best thing you can to make sure that your candidate wins through the primaries. But once that's done, it's done. We don't choose before. We don't have this let's agree conversation before the primary.
But we can't run to a conclusion yet. And I'm concerned that the never Trump concept is now bringing out I had somebody on my Facebook page that said, well, don't you know it's over? I mean, this was before Super Tuesday. Don't you know that it is over and that this is God's plan and that Trump is God's plan? And I should just shut up and give him my allegiance and my vote.
No, that's not what a primary is about.
That's not going to happen at this time.
But the thing is here, too, is this primary, I think, has been very ugly. And it's been very ugly within the rights ranks, whereby you have conservatives calling other conservatives stupid or ill-read. You have a complete attack on Trump supporters.
Well, a lot of that was started by Donald Trump, in fairness. Now, that's part of that's how he says, good morning, sweetheart. That's part of how he approaches people who are in opposition to him. So, I mean, in fairness to the truth.
Did he run $125 million of attack ads on Bush? No.
No.
This is right. So,
well, he didn't have to.
But specifically towards Trump's supporters, there has been a huge amount of animus. There has been a lot of insults directed, and it reminded me of the Tea Party. You know, I started out really my activism in the Tea Party. And I had 2,000 people show up on April 15th, in the middle of the day at 2 o'clock. And I remember that the GOP establishment was looking at the Tea Party with these eyes like nearly crossed, or at least the stink eye.
Now, why was that, Megan? You tell us that, and that tells you where they are today with Donald Trump.
Well,
why did they look at the Tea Party with those crossed eyes and who are you crazy people?
Well, right, because we were actually, the reason we got off the couch was because our government had gotten too big. We wanted our limited government back. We were taxed enough already.
And we thought there were a lot of people in Washington who would appreciate the help that we were willing to bring.
Well, right, and there simply wasn't, right? I mean, Sharon, you ran as I think a Tea Party candidate. I was in California at the time, but I was paying attention, and you were up against the machine, and you were looked at, you were probably called crazy, or you were called a kook, or you were called a racist, or, you were called all of the same things that I'm hearing the right call the Trumpsters or the Trump movement. And I don't understand how we've gotten down into just completely insulting the average American voter. Like, that's
well, and I think we're seeing the difference between 2010, when that movement was young and they had never seen anything like it before, and 2016, where the movement now is informed, they're energized, and they're a little smarter than they were in 2010.
They're politically more savvy.
That's right. And they're now saying, we're not listening to you when you call us kooky. We're not listening when you say wacky. We're not listening when you're saying extreme, because we know what the truth is. And that's why they're rallying to the rhetoric that Trump is putting out there. He's speaking to their truth, and they're saying, yes, we have got to do something in this country. Yes, we have to secure the borders. Yes. So it's a way different climate than it was 6 years ago, because we've matured in the movement.
Yeah, and no, the movement has matured, but the insults are still remain. Do you know what I'm saying?
And they're still coming from the same direction.
Correct. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. The
And
same people that were disparaging the Tea Party are the same people that are disparaging Trump supporters.
That's right. But they just fail to mature with us.
And they're also disparaging the Cruz or conservative supporters as well.
Right. That's right.
Thus the factioning.
And if Cruz supporters think that if they could just get that Donald J. Trump out of the way, everything would be good. If the folks who want to destroy Donald Trump destroy him, they're going to eat Ted Cruz next.
There you go.
Megan, thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Wade. Thanks so much.
Kevin Wade.
Oh, Kevin Wade. Sorry.
Short name, it's easy to remember.
So bad. It's my blonde, and it's been a long day. And I still have one more. It was really a pleasure to meet you, Sharon.
Thank you so much, Megan.
I'm glad to know
my pleasure as well.
Yeah, thank you.
And I'm Pastor Greg, and it's always a pleasure to have you with us, Megan. And I'll see you, we'll see you tomorrow, I'm sure, but definitely Monday, noon, right here on Conservative Commando Radio, Chosen Generation, as we kick off next week. But we've got a full day of broadcasting tomorrow.
Non-stop. And Ted Cruz and Donald Trump are going to be here on Saturday. You are listening to WNJC 1360 AM. Conservative Commandos Radio Network. I'm Kevin Wade. I'm manning the table with Greg Young right now, and I always enjoy CPAC. It's a place where everyone kind of comes together. In the past, it was come together in spirit. Now it's more geographically we've come together, and we've got some family issues that need to be spoken about over the kitchen table in private, and that has to happen in this conservative movement in the next month or two.
I think there's no doubt about that, and it's interesting. This is my first year. As preparing Americans communicating, over the CPAC seems to be somewhat of a phenomenon. It is. Because of all of the phenomenon. We're looking forward to seeing you, Liz. And, National Review's articles that came out that insinuated that Trump's not a conservative. I believe that's what how does a conservative political action coalition embrace someone that William saying?
Well, because there's nothing that's not conservative. For example, Greg, there's nothing that's not conservative about securing the border. There's nothing that's not conservative about ending Common Core. And we could go on, but we're not going in that direction because we now have a new guest.
It's 5 o'clock, and I want to thank everybody for the Conservative Commandos Radio Show. Kevin Wade, Pastor Greg Young, Sharon Abel, Jason Miller, Christina Mayer. We've had a great day, and we're going to wrap and go to the next show, playing Hot Seat here today.
Okay, God bless, Godspeed, and may God save the United States of America.